Dana Denha here, and this is Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival. Every year, talented artists from all over the world aim to take part in our local film fest. Many times you'll find the talent is homegrown as filmmakers thriving in our great state of Michigan make their mark on this internationally renowned annual event. Joining me is Frank Pahl, an artist here to show us his take on an old classic. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Great to be here.
So let's just start off with kind of what led you to filmmaking? What's your background?
When I was 14, I got a job as a doorman at Wyandotte Theater, and then when I was probably about 18 years old, I was at Wayne State University working for the English department, and film studies in the 70s ended up in the English department.
Oh, really?
And so I was a projectionist for Joe Gomez, who was the closest thing to a mentor that I had as an undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got his take on film, which was not the traditional take. We studied, Peter Watkins and Nicholas Roeg and Ken Russell were the were what we were getting a daily dose of.
Yeah, yeah.
While in undergrad, I took beginning film was actually in Super 8. And then I took animation, which was 16 millimeter stop motion, and I took a live action one where I made a music video for my band. This was the old A and B roll editing days with Moviola, and I befriended the James Knight, who worked in the film lab, because you have to work after hours when you're working in film because it takes so much longer. So I was lucky in that, you know, each course I took, I left with a completed film, which is saying a lot. A lot of people weren't they weren't mirroring the soundtracks to the images back then. But I figured, well, if I have to take an incomplete, I'm going to do it. You know, I want to leave with a finished film.
And were you always making the soundtracks to your own films, or were you working with other people from the beginning? Or
I did the music for the first three, yeah. So, yeah, I've always used my own music.
That's nice. So you always had a background in music that you wanted to intertwine with your filmmaking?
Yeah, for having a background in, you know, that's my day job.
Yeah.
That's you know, it's sound related and music projects.
But you weren't going to school for that. You were.
But I've taken a handful of college classes in music.
Yeah.
As an undergrad, I took every piano for non-music majors class that I could, and even begged my way into repeating it because it was good for me. I still am not a great reader, but I need the discipline of a class. And then decades later, I went to grad school at University of Michigan, and even though I was in the School of Art and Design, they encourage you to take classes outside of art and design. So I took music classes, and those were every bit as fruitful as the art and design classes, because basically I was there building installations and the like.
So what are you doing now? You work at the University of Michigan now?
Not directly, and I don't work for College for Creative Studies directly. When you're an adjunct, you don't have a contract, so.
Yeah.
Yes, I will probably work for both institutions at some point. But currently I'm working for Interlochen.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what do you do at Interlochen?
I'm building dozens of automatic instruments, and even some bona fide, basically if you call something an automaton, it should have the human figure in it. So some things that are a little bit automaton-like, in that I've got a skeleton whose arm makes several movements.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's strange to even,
and I'm writing music, I forgot that.
Yeah.
But I'm writing music, you know, for the students and for some adults there to accompany a play.
This is like the strangest career path ever. I've never heard of any of this stuff before, the things that you're doing.
Oh.
So how does that happen? How did you get to this point? I mean, just working with the art installations and stuff like that?
I was in a group called Only a Mother that was doing fairly well. We were on a division of Rolf Records. I was in Europe, and I found out that I was accepted to the School of Art and Design for MFA program here, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I'd already met Trimpen, who made automatic instruments using MIDI, and I met Pierre Bastien, who made automatic instruments using Meccano, which is the European equivalent of Electroset parts. And I was inspired by both of them, but I didn't want to be either of them. But it was perfect because I met one person that was too high-tech for me and somebody else that was like working in materials I understood, and I think I put them both together at U of M.
So how does this ability of yours play out in your filmmaking today?
We frequently use motors, and when we watch Ziegler, you'll see some clockwork parts that appear to be moving by themselves.
And when you say we, you're talking about Terri?
Terri Sarris and I.
Yeah.
So when we make films, my automatons frequently play a part. There's a film that I haven't finished the treatment of, but the arm that I was telling you about, I came up with the arm first, and it's like, I'm writing a narrative about it. And it's actually, it's unspooling a little bit like a Hammer horror flick.
Okay.
But it's an automaton builder whose work has been destroyed in a fire, and he's had his arm damaged. So he wants to rebuild his own arm. We'll see if that one ever makes it to light. But
it sounds like it would be a fun
But the arm
watch.
is done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you can work around the work you're creating.
Right.
So that seems like that would be the hard part of it.
And we have a puppet that we think could be the character.
Yeah.
But there's going to be other films that will take a priority, but I'm shooting for that one down the line. So the automatons are also, it's kinetic. So cinema is about as kinetic as you can get. So I think that, especially when you're using stop motion animation, that they exist in the same world pretty easily.
Is that typically the films you're making are stop motion animation?
Yes, yes.
And was that something that you and Terri always did, or was that something you did individually first and then you guys kind of started working together?
I don't think that either of us really ever defined ourselves as stop motion people. And you'll see in Ziegler, we mix stop motion with the hand is out of the picture moving a puppet. So I shouldn't say that we're doing stop motion per se. It's a little bit of that, plus if you think of Art Clokey and the clumsiness of the Gumby films, and I shouldn't say clumsiness, but because they totally work.
Yeah,
and with Davy and Goliath, he even stepped it up a bit. I mean, it's pretty convincing, the movement. But that's doable.
Yeah. That's
doable. And we are able to shoot in a small space on the first level in 16 millimeter and make it look convincing in an Art Clokey way. Even though that's not like our only, we also like Jan Schwankmeyer and Brothers Quay, just as far as not just their look, but the fact that they're using pre-existing stories and telling narratives. So we're interested in adaptation.
Okay, well, let's take a look. Now that we've heard about Frank's career and experience, let's watch his film with Terri Sarris, Ziegler. We're back here with Frank Pahl, and he's going to tell us about the film he made with Terri Sarris. And first, I'd like to know a little bit about, because before we watched the film, you were talking about how you and Terri like to take pre-existing stories and put your own spin on it in the filmmaking world. So what attracted you to this? It's a man by the name of Ziegler from 1908. So how did you kind of come about finding the story and then wanting to create a film for it?
This doesn't seem like it would be the obvious place to go, but since we're both instructors, students frequently bring in projects that are not doable. Mm-hmm. It's so obvious to start with doable, and yet you feel like you're crushing them every time you say, "What are you thinking, a car chase?" That isn't going to happen. So it was doable.
Yeah.
We had the raw materials, as in the characters, which are all Mike Woodruff, a friend of ours, gave them to Terri. They're these kind of burnt, damaged.
So they are damaged.
Oh yeah, they're.
I mean,
they're pretty.
They look damaged.
They were made of rubber, and they're just like they age the way old rubber ages. We had the backdrops, and the story was from a collection. People don't think of Hermann Hesse as a writer of fairy tales, but it was from a fairy tale collection. And it was my second favorite story, but the first story was not doable. And we both agreed. It's like, well, then we'd have to build a set. And I am happy to say that Ziegler, I think, was one of a few films that we've made that were shot in a single day.
Really? Yeah.
It may have been a second day, but I think that one was a single day. And I like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's nice. You can kind of, I mean, it's not a huge undertaking, but it still is like a quality piece of filmmaking that you created.
Well, thanks.
Can you tell us about, because there's no actual like dialogue in your film, is there anything you think that when people are watching it that they might not completely get about the story? Because I read the story too, from watching the film.
Did you get everything?
See, the one thing I don't know if I completely understood was that the animals were talking to him. Like, I don't know if I got that watching the film.
Oh, okay.
That he could hear what they were saying.
Okay,
I mean, I kind of got that he was losing it.
Right.
You know, but yeah.
And it's a bit of a risk.
Yeah.
See, it's odd because you're asking
almost
the wrong person because it was like, no, I always thought we were like too obvious. And one of the things that we do is title cards are great, but you know, Terri and I are both part of Little Bang Theory. We accompany silent films. Mm-hmm. The best silent films don't have a lot of title cards.
Yeah.
You don't really need them.
Yeah.
So she did the first pass at the script, and then I just cut it down a little bit, and the script was mostly the title cards.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is Terri just has a brilliant idea of the art direction. So she was seeing the backdrops of like the city and how we could pull off him walking across the city, which you can't see, but my hands are out of the frame, and I'm doing this and moving the character in front of a Bernard Buffet painting of Paris, and it looks curiously impressive.
No, it definitely does,
Or
yeah.
at least believable. Yeah.
No, the backdrops to me I thought they looked great with the imagery. That's why I think that was one of the things I asked you when I first met you just now, where the backdrops came from, because I thought they looked fantastic.
The zoo is an upside down abstract painting.
Yeah.
But I think there was like a flower or something in it, and it looked like a surreal zoo.
Yeah.
Which by that time he's already taken the drug.
Yes.
So it should be surreal.
So you and Terry just kind of find this stuff too a lot of times, right? Like you'll go to garage sales and things like that to find some of your set pieces for these films.
Well, one of the things that she does is she's an assemblage box maker. And since I do the automatics, and I'm from Wyandotte, Michigan, so I have a lot of toys. For those who don't know, Wyandotte was a great toy manufacturer in the 50s, but they're metal toys. So I'm always looking for antique metal musical toys. So yes, we go to a stupid number of flea markets and yard sales.
And then when you're making these films, you consider yourself more of like the audio guy. So what do you do to create the soundtrack for a movie like this? Do you watch the film, like you create the film first and then?
Yeah. I think that geez, I have to think about this for a second. With this one, I don't think the film was fully edited because she likes to edit to music. And I wrote the entire music that I thought would work, and I even did a couple of little excerpts, and I gave it to her, and she said, that's way too clean. Even though the piano was prepared and some of the accompaniment was propane tanks that were sawed off to get the correct notes. So I went back again and I played everything that I played on piano on a baritone ukulele with paper stuck in between the strings so it would buzz.
Wow.
So you had one score that was kind of pretty and full and another one that wasn't. And she chopped up the music. So the order that you hear the music isn't the way I wrote it.
Okay.
And I am totally fine with that. Another film whose name I won't mention now, but it's based on a story by Borges. The person that was doing all of the narration, Shara Warden, Sharanova, I don't know, from My Brightest Diamond. She wanted to do a pass straight, and then she wanted to do it with the music. The music hadn't been recorded yet, so I recorded. I recorded the music, and everything I recorded in a short amount of time ended up being used anyhow. But then I'll take and tweak. You know, as long as it's working.
Yeah.
I'd rather just get a bed track and then tweak it later.
Okay.
So I spent maybe a couple dozen hours editing it.
Yes.
Even though the session with Shara took, I don't know, a few hours.
Yeah, yeah. And are you doing strictly just music, or are you like the sound effects person too?
The sound effects.
Okay.
Though the typewriter,
yeah.
I recorded all of the typewriter sounds, and then Terri placed them where she wanted to. So if you notice that they're a little off sync, that's on purpose.
You know, I didn't note. I don't think you'd really notice unless you were really trying to.
And we're not trying to be too on the nose.
Yeah,
This isn't a Foley film.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you watch the movie, it definitely has like this old era about it. And did you want to do that because the story was so old, or was that like a conscious choice to do that, or was it just because the figures that you were using in the piece?
I think it's all organically the same thing.
Yeah.
So shooting in 8mm and 16mm, and using the old figures, and even if you're using a clean instrument to kind of like find a way to transmogrify it a bit, those all lend themselves to nostalgic subject matter. So I don't know which comes first.
Yeah.
Except that the stories we tend to tell, even the one that I'm writing about, the automaton builder, it's based, the fill of the story that I'm writing is clearly Hammer films from the 50s or 60s. So our influences are probably not that much different than what they would have been in the 60s and 70s in our, whatever.
So when was this film in the Ann Arbor Film Festival? Was that a recent?
I'm thinking 2013.
So fairly recent, yeah. And then have you guys had other films in the festival?
Terri had 2 films last year, and one of them shared Best Doc.
Oh, nice.
And in other ways, we're involved with the festival frequently. Okay. So I've done music for 3 trailers, and I've done 2 pieces in Work Gallery that were affiliated with the festival. One piece that was in the upstairs. And I've done at least 3 pre-performance. They used to have like performance art pieces beforehand. So I've worked with Terri and Mike Woodruff and Nick Drury and Greg Holm and Russ Taylor, all as pre-performance acts. Yeah.
So you're very involved in the festival. You're a big supporter of it.
I am.
Yeah.
I love what they're doing, and it's definitely like, it's an Ann Arbor institution that we want to be there for forever.
Oh, definitely.
And yet I don't go to meetings.
You're not a meeting guy.
No. But I was a pre-judge once, so I trust them. They don't need me in a meeting.
Okay. So if you could just tell people why they should check out the festival in any facet as a viewer or a filmmaker.
Well, this year they're having, can I do a little self-promotion?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Little Bang Theory is accompanying A Page of Madness, which is a Japanese film from 1926. People say it's based, that it's similar to Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It is somewhat in subject matter, but in the way the story unfolds and everything. It's a very unique film. And so it's live accompaniment to an avant-garde silent film. And there's a second live act. So if you want to see live acts with film, you have that. If you want to see the animation program is always exceptional. If you want to support local acts, if you want to support international acts, you've been. I don't have to convince you. It's a real community thing.
Yeah.
So there's that. I need another reason.
No, you don't need any more reasons.
The popcorn, don't they use real butter?
I don't know. I don't know if they do there.
But if you're going to a festival for the popcorn, there's a problem with the festival. That's not going to be the main reason you're going to be going.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Frank.
Thank you. Thank you.
For more on this and other CTN series online, visit a2gov.org/watchctn. I'm Dana Denhoff for Let's Watch with the Ann Arbor Film Festival.